Mission San Luis Rey de Francia is also known as the King of Missions and is the 18th in the chain. It is named after King Louis IX, who was a devout Catholic and the only canonized king of France. St. Louis, Missouri is also named after him. The mission was founded on June 12, 1798 by Father Fermin Lausen, who was then the president of the California Missions. The original church had 32 Roman arches and corridor, which formed one side of the mission's quadrangle. Now only 12 remain. So there's all the arches, and now only 12 of these are left. These are the arches. The current church was built in 1815. It is the third church built in this location. San Luis Rey de Francia has a beautiful altar and is the only surviving mission laid out in a cruciform plan. The mission cemetery is to the right of the church entrance. Franciscan burial crypts can be found here. As well as beautiful grounds. The mission also has an impressive collection of sacred statues. A unique feature of the church is its octagonal cupola with 144 panes of glass. The dome is made of pine wood and was built in 1829. There is a photo of the original cupola in the mission's museum, as well as hand-lathed columns which were damaged in a fire. The mission's quadrangle was the site of bullfights, and the first Peruvian pepper tree in California was planted there in 1830. Peruvian pepper trees are now called California pepper trees and are prevalent in the state. South of the mission are the sunken gardens, where 2 springs provided water. Also located here are the Lavanderia ruins. This is the Lavanderia, and the fellow in the gift shop was telling us that they would actually put charcoal in this runoff water to purify it before it was sent back out to water the crops. So charcoal filtering 200 years ago. Pretty cool. In the old Lavanderia is an abundance of original adobe tiles. Nearby to the Lavanderia are the ruins of the original mission kiln. This is the kiln at St. Louis Rey, or was the kiln. We go down the hill and see the Lavanderia, which is all that down there. Father Antonio Peri was the leader of San Luis Rey de Francia from 1799 until 1833. Under his stewardship, San Luis Rey de Francia became the most productive mission in California. The mission's ranches boasted 60,000 head of cattle and raised 13,000 bushels of grain a year. Peri also converted 3,500 members of the native Quechua tribe. These became known as Luiseno Indians, named after the mission and King Louis of France. One Luiseno convert, Pablo Tac, wrote of Father Perry, "The Father is like a king. He has his pages, accolades, major domos, musicians, soldiers, gardens, rancho, and livestock." In 1833, Father Perry's rule and the mission's way of life was coming to an end. Mexican independence from Spain meant Spanish missions were now under Mexican rule. Father Perry is said to have attempted cooperation with Mexican authorities, including Mexico's first governor of California, Pio Pico. Father Perry was ultimately driven from the mission in 1832. He attempted to sail away quietly from San Diego, but 500 neophytes followed and pleaded with him not to leave. He never returned to his mission or to California. After Mexican secularization, the mission was sold in 1834 to private owners. By 1835, most neophytes refused to stay at the mission any longer and declared, "We are free. We do not want to obey. We do not want to work." With no religious services and few natives remaining, the mission fell into disrepair. Mexico's rule did not last long, however. The Mexican-American War was fought from 1846 to 1848, and from 1846 to 1847, the mission was used as a U.S. Army outpost. On March 18, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln signed a document which returned all 21 missions to the Catholic Church and the state of California. Some mission buildings, in poor shape, and 65 acres of land were returned. At Mission San Luis Rey de Francia is a copy of that document with one of the few original signatures of Abraham Lincoln outside of Washington, D.C. In 1892, another extremely important Franciscan, Father Joseph Jeremias O'Keefe, arrived at the mission. Father O'Keefe is credited with directing the efforts to rebuild Mission San Luis Rey de Francia after it had sat abandoned for years. This was not an easy task. In his own words, "The mission church and buildings were in such a state of utter ruin that I almost felt despaired of being able to do enough to put them into habitable condition again." Despite his feelings, Father O'Keefe began his work. With the help of Mexican friars, in 1893, the church was rededicated and religious services began again. Restoration efforts began in 1895 and continue to this day. Today, Mission San Luis Rey de Francia is an impressive example of a California mission. It features outstanding artwork, engaging museum exhibits, and a beautiful campus. Over the church fly the flags of Spain, Mexico, California, and the United States. Each represent a stage of the mission's existence and speak to its rich history. Be sure to exit through the gift shop. After visiting our first mission on the trip, we headed south towards San Diego and made a stop for lunch at the Fashion Valley Mall. We parked next to this guy. Remember, it's not the size of the van for the camper, it's the size of the camper in the van. We had lunch at the Tommy Bahama Marlin Bar, and we recommend it. They have tasty, if touristy, Mai Tais. It wasn't long before we were set up at our first campsite at the San Diego RV Resort. Within walking distance up the hill, we heard about the Luau Tiki Bar, and you know we had to go check it out. The Luau had lots of fun decor. They also had $5 Mai Tais. We tried a couple of their different drinks. Luau San Diego. Good atmosphere, good drinks, but they need to work on their music. Soon we were back at camp and getting ready to go to bed. This is us at the San Diego RV Resort, heading off today to go see the Mission San Diego de Alcalá. The great thing about San Diego RV Resort is that the 70th Street station is right there. 4 stops later, and we were on to our second mission of the trip. On Sunday, July 16, 1769, Father Junipero Serra, Juan Vizcaino, and Fernando Perron raised and blessed a Spanish cross to establish Alta California's first mission. The mission is named for Catholic saint Didacus of Alcala, and you can find a statue of him near the front of the mission.
They're very patient to get this shot. The ceiling, San Diego.
There is also a painting of him under the yellow and red canopy, which denotes that Mission San Diego is a Catholic basilica.
It's a basilica, so the umbrella's got the papal colors on it.
Over the altar is a rare Old World representation of God the Father. In present-day Catholic churches, only Christ is depicted. Just below, you will find a representation of the crucified Christ. This corpus of Christ is of Spanish origin and from the 17th century. His missing arms serve to remind us that we are to be the arms of Christ in the world. Mission San Diego was originally established 6 miles west of its current location. It was relocated in 1774 to be closer to a water source and the native population of Kumeyaay people. The present buildings are from 1813, and the facade we see today was rebuilt in the 1930s to recreate the exterior. Mission San Diego is the site of many of California's firsts. The first vineyards in California were planted at the mission in 1769 by Father Serra, and by 1781, wine was being produced at the mission. It is where the first baptism in California was performed, and it is also the site of the first Christian burial in California.
Here is the chapel, San Diego.
Today, baptisms are often observed in the La Capilla Chapel. It houses the choir stalls, altar table, and celebrants' chairs dating to the 1400s. They were a gift to the mission and imported from Spain. Mission San Diego was also the site of the first public execution in California in 1778. In 1775, there was an uprising by 800 natives, and they burned the church to the ground. You can still see foundations of the original 1806 convento buildings at the mission. In the uprising, the mission's blacksmith was killed, 2 children, associate pastor Father Vicente Fuster, and Father Luis Jaime, who became California's first martyr.
Here we are, San Diego de Alcala.
At the church is this white cross, a burial marker for Father Jaime. His remains are entombed beneath the chancel floor. In 1776, Father Serra returned to oversee the rebuilding of the church.
And that is what San Diego used to look like.
Mission San Diego is noted for its 46-foot-high campanario, or bell wall. The bell on the lower right is named Ave Maria Purissima, Immaculate Mary. It weighs 805 pounds and was cast in 1802. The bell on the lower left is called Mater Dolorosa, Our Lady of Sorrows. It weighs 1,200 pounds and was recast by the Standard Ironworks of San Diego in 1895 from bell fragments found in the vicinity of the mission. The sign explaining the campanario states, "The bells played an important role in everyday life of the mission. They were used to announce times for Mass, work, meals, and siestas. The bells signaled danger, rang solemnly to honor the dead, and pealed joyously to celebrate feast days, weddings, and fiestas."
Casa de los Padres.
Casa de los Padres is one of the only intact sections of the mission. It was most likely the original living quarters of the Padres and has been furnished as if it were one of the Padres' cells. In 1834, the mission was secularized by the Mexican government. On June 8, 1846, the mission was given to Santiago Arguello by Governor Pio Pico, quote, "for services rendered to the government." The mission was used by the United States Cavalry from 1850 to 1857, and the buildings fell into disrepair. In 1862, President Lincoln signed a proclamation that restored ownership of the missions to the Roman Catholic Church. The Catholic Daughters of America were instrumental in the restoration of the buildings in the 1930s. Today, the mission has a museum which traces the history of the area from the time before the Franciscan missionaries through the restoration of the mission in the 1930s. There are many displays and artifacts depicting the history of this, California's first mission. Be sure to exit through the gift shop.
San Diego.
After the mission, it was just another short trip on the trolley to our next tiki bar, The false idol. We tried to get into the false idol before on another trip to San Diego, but we couldn't because it is so popular. Looking around at all the decor, you can see why. They serve truly outstanding tiki cocktails. The False Idol Tiki Bar in San Diego. What a fantastic place. I know that we'll be back someday soon. The next day, we had a shower and let our towels dry a bit in the sun before heading north towards our next campsite at Doheny State Beach. On the way, we stopped at the Oceanside Surf Museum. They had several interesting and fun displays. They also had this great tiki in the backyard. There's no tiki bar in Oceanside, but Stone Brewing has a tasting room. They have a really great hazy IPA, and we stopped in for a sip. After lunch, we made camp at Doheny State Beach. Little did we know when we took this picture of California's bear on the bench how much we were about to learn about the history of California, the settlers, the native animals, and people. The beach was great, and we rested up for our next day at Mission San Juan Capistrano. Long before Spanish priests and leather jacket soldiers came to what would become the site of the 7th mission, San Juan Capistrano, the Aha Shaman people lived here for thousands of years.
San Juan Capistrano, the jewel of the missions.
Mission San Juan Capistrano is now known not only as the jewel of the missions, but also as the birthplace of Orange County. The Aha Shaman people were known for their music, which connected them with the natural world. Museum displays show how their songs were like prayers, and that they would play instruments such as clappersticks, rattles, and flutes. They would also wear ceremonial clothing and paint their faces and bodies, as depicted here. The displays also explain how the Aha Shaman easily took to European instruments after the Spanish arrived, due to their musical culture.
Here is a painting of St. John Capistran, the 15th century monk that San Juan Capistrano is named after. He's also known as the warrior priest and the scourge of the Jews. He helped stop the siege of the Ottoman Empire and the Turks.
Mission San Juan Capistrano was founded October 30th, 1775 by Father Lawson, but it was abandoned after only a week as the Kumeyaay uprising in San Diego necessitated the fathers to leave with their soldiers to help with the fight. Father Serra refounded the mission on November 1st, 1776. This statue depicts Father Serra showing an Aha Shaman child the way towards Christianity and has become an iconic symbol of the California missions. San Juan Capistrano is known for Father Serra Chapel. It is the oldest building in California and the only building where Father Serra said Mass and performed baptisms. The altar is from Barcelona, Spain, made of cherry wood and covered in gold leaf. At the center of the altar is a statue of St. John Capistran. The chapel is a resting place of priests Jose Barona, Vicente Fuster, and Vicente Pascual Olivia. They're all entombed in the sanctuary floor.
This is a model of the Great Stone Church, which collapsed in an earthquake in 1812. And this is what is left.
Bells from the Great Stone Church, which collapsed in 1812, hang in this bell wall. An interesting fact about Mission San Juan Capistrano is that on December 14, 1818, French pirate Hippolyte Bouchard, known as California's only pirate, who had conducted raids in Monterey and Santa Barbara, attacked the mission with 140 men. The ship here is a Star of India from the San Diego Maritime Museum and dates to 1863. The mission does a good job displaying the various agriculture and trades it used to engage in. Among other crops, Mission San Juan Capistrano cultivated grapes. Father Serra wanted to produce wine in California instead of waiting for ships to bring it in from Mexico. It is believed vine cuttings were brought from Mexico, and vineyards began in California in the 1780s.
In San Juan Capistrano, they would cultivate the grapes, and they would stomp the grapes into wine that they would use during the services.
Here you can see the ruins of an exterior wine vat. And this is an interior wine vat. There was a lot of communion to serve. San Juan Capistrano was the first mission to produce iron from ore, and the ruins of the Catalan furnaces can be found on the property. July 25, 1826, Jose Maria de Echeandía, governor of Alta California, issued the Proclamation of Emancipation. Part of this document outlined that the native people were freed from the missions and became Mexican citizens. In 1834, the mission was secularized by the Mexican government. Secularization meant the end of the community built in and around the mission. Most of the mission's land was sold into private hands by Governor Pio Pico, and the mission's buildings became administration buildings for the Mexican pueblo or town which took the mission's place. Mismanagement and embezzlement meant a quick collapse for the pueblo, and the mission buildings became the private residence of the Forster family.
Just want to get a shot of that threshold that has been used.
The Forster family lived at the mission for over 20 years, and the mission has laid out some rooms to depict their lifestyle. But since the Ahashemen natives left the mission to become cooks, factory workers, and cowboys, as far away as San Diego and Los Angeles, the mission eventually fell into ruin. 69 people are buried in the cemetery, mostly Juaneño Indians, Ahashemen natives renamed for the mission. Monsignor St. John O'Sullivan, who worked to restore the mission, is buried near the entrance to the cemetery. A statue of him is at the head of the crypt. In the 1850s, the ruined buildings were often painted, and the mission got the nicknames Alhambra of America, American Acropolis, and the Melrose Abbey of the West. In 1894, the railroad constructed a depot which created the architectural Mission Revival style across the street from the mission. The depot still stands today. When leaving San Juan Capistrano, don't forget to exit through the gift shop. hope you'll join us for Volume 2 when we head off for Mission San Buenaventura, Mission Santa Barbara, and Mission Santinez.